Hello Raptors fans, and welcome back to Raptors Report. Today we will be discussing the Toronto Raptors victory against the Orlando Magic. But before we do that, I want to talk about the trade deadline because there are a ton of rumors swirling around the NBA as we speak, because the Toronto Raptors have been involved in some trade discussions, allegedly, between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat as a team that could help facilitate a Jimmy Butler trade. So I want to talk about that. Also think that there's another trade that could be made, and I've kind of read the tea leaves and poked around and figured out another trade, so stick around for that. But first, why don't we talk about what's happening with Jimmy Butler and why the Toronto Raptors are involved in this trade discussion. So Jimmy Butler, there's no secret here, he has wanted out of Miami for at least the past month, probably longer, but it was kept under wraps for a while until it bubbled over and he started making comments to the media about not having enough help and how he wanted to win, etc., etc. The Heat did not take very kindly to that and suspended him, and basically where we're at now is that the trade deadline's rapidly approaching, and the Heat, I think, want to continue on without him, and they want to remove a distraction from their dressing room right now and very quickly, probably before the trade deadline even happens. And there are not a ton of ways to make that happen. And in fact, one of the teams that has emerged as a Jimmy Butler suitor is not the Phoenix Suns, as you may have thought. There's been a lot of speculation on a Jimmy Butler for Bradley Beal deal. However, I don't think that the Heat really want to take on Bradley Beal's contract. I don't even know. I don't like Bradley Beal very much as a player. I think the Heat are probably in the same boat. So I think that what the Heat are looking for is maybe something that the Bucks could offer. And the Toronto Raptors could probably make something happen there, because the Bucks can't straight up trade for Jimmy Butler using their own contracts. They need to do a bit more tweaking in order for things to work. So a deal that I could see happening is between the Milwaukee Bucks, the Raptors, and the Heat. And here's the proposed trade that I have here, is that Chris Middleton, Bruce Brown, and Chris Boucher would be going to the Heat. The Bucks would be getting Jimmy Butler and Orlando Robinson. Orlando Robinson is just in there to make enough salary for the Raptors. They have to move a little bit of extra salary, and he helps that happen. And then the Raptors would be getting Duncan Robinson, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, and Tyler Smith. And in addition to that, there would be some picks going out. So the Heat would be getting a kind of mortgaged pick in 2027, and then a 2031 pick from Milwaukee, either unprotected or, with light protections. Kind of similar to what the Suns did recently. They gave up that 30-31 pick, which is the first pick that this season has been made available for teams to trade, because you can't trade picks too far off. And that would be one of the things that the Bucks could give up, like one of those first-round picks that they haven't been able to trade. They'd be able to trade this season. So although Jimmy Butler wants to go to Phoenix, and he's made that pretty clear with the color of his shoes, his hair, etc., it's not really up to him. He doesn't have a no-trade clause, so they can trade him anywhere. And he has been talking through his agent to warn teams, like, don't trade for me. I'm not interested in playing for you guys. However, when we're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks, that's kind of what Damian Lillard was doing with them. And they called his bluff and said, listen, you're going to play with us. We don't care if you don't like it here. Suck it up. And they traded a bunch of assets for him, and now it's starting to work out. So I could easily see them doing the same thing for Jimmy Butler, getting him. They would be giving up Chris Middleton, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis, Tyler Smith, and then 3 first-round picks. And that's a big price to pay. Jimmy Butler only has 1 year left on his contract, but this would make them probably one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference to win a championship. He would fit perfectly next to Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, playing between the two of those guys. He's a great defender. He's a winning player. I mean, the Bucks know all about how good Jimmy Butler is. Like, come on. They've seen what he's done to them in the past. So they would probably be willing to give up 4 guys like Tyler Smith is a project. Pat Connaughton doesn't play for them anymore. Bobby Portis is not really a contributor. I mean, he does play major minutes for them, but he doesn't really play the game the right way. And if you watch him play, he's really kind of a tough pill to swallow. And then Chris Middleton, who has been a stalwart for them and really impressed me last season. He kind of carried them in the playoffs against the Pacers. So he would be probably the hardest guy for them to let go, but you know, you got to pay the price, and if that's what it takes to get Jimmy Butler, I could definitely see them making this trade. For the Heat, they get a guy who is probably a good culture fit with them, Chris Middleton. He's been injured most of the season, but he's come back, and I think if he gets healthy for them in the playoffs, they could use him. He's in kind of the role player phase of his career, probably high-end role player. And it looks like they just kind of want to keep going without Jimmy Butler. They seem like a team that's never going to want to tank, and he makes sense for them to help them out in the playoffs, especially with Jimmy Butler kind of dogging it for them. And then for the Toronto Raptors, the Raptors kind of get dumped a bunch of contracts on them. So Duncan Robinson, I actually don't mind Duncan Robinson. I think he's a rotation caliber player, and although his contract's pretty big for what he brings, he can do some stuff for you on offense, and he might be a good fit next to, you know, Scottie Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, RJ Barrett. He could slot between RJ and Scottie, and obviously you're giving up something on the defensive end, but he could fit in a couple of different lineups. Bobby Portis, you know, he's a decent bench big. He can stretch the floor out a little bit. He's a pretty maddening player to watch, but, you know, he could kind of be okay for the Raptors, although I'm not a huge fan of his. Pat Connaughton's pretty much washed at this point. And then Tyler Smith is kind of an interesting prospect for the Raptors to develop. He's a stretch big who played for the G League Ignite, and he's got some issues kind of figuring the game out. Like he's kind of, his processing isn't quite there yet, but the Toronto Raptors could maybe give him a couple of minutes, kick the tires on him. His contract is very cheap. They could try him out in the G League. He's playing for the Wisconsin Herd, so he's already in the G League, and he has some potential as, you know, a stretch for undersized 5 in certain lineups, so he could be an interesting piece for the Toronto Raptors moving forward. They could try and bring him into their system and develop him. And then obviously they'd be getting a future first for that. So there's some intriguing upside here for the Toronto Raptors. And then they'd be giving up Bruce Brown and Chris Boucher, who have played, Bruce Brown really struggled in his first few games of the season with the Toronto Raptors. He looked absolutely horrible, but he's bounced back as of late, and he has a pretty good track record in the NBA. I think the Heat would be interested in adding him. Chris Boucher had that like super mega tear where the 4 games he was unstoppable, and he's kind of fallen back to earth, but as we know, he's a feast or famine type player, and he'd be going to the Heat. Those are 2 pretty good role players who could help the Heat in the playoffs. I think that they'd be interested in them, and then they expire at the end of the season so that he can go out and find somebody on the free agent market. So that's kind of how the deal works for all of the different teams. I think I'd be for this for the Toronto Raptors. This is the kind of deal that that they should be trying to make, is trading Bruce Brown and Chris Boucher expiring contracts for slightly worse contracts, plus picks and prospects. So they'd be getting a prospect and a future first for Chris Boucher and Bruce Brown, which is decent value. And then Duncan Robinson's kind of, you know, an intriguing piece. I think that's a pretty good trade all around. I'd be interested in it if I were a Toronto Raptors fan, if I were a Bucks fan. If I were a Heat fan, this is kind of ticking all the boxes. Obviously, the Heat would like to get more back for Jimmy Butler. Let's be honest here. Jimmy Butler at his best is like superstar kind of esque player who can carry you in the playoffs. He's gotten teams that don't have a ton of talent to the NBA Finals, so if the Bucks were able to grab him, they'd be probably one of the favorites for the championship. And then the Heat giving it up would be a difficult pill to swallow, but they look like they're kind of running out of options right now, and he's making it very difficult for their locker room. So they're incentivized to make a trade, and they get some future firsts, some expirings. Chris Middleton, you know, kind of makes sense for them. That's what I'm thinking right there. Next up, let's talk about Kelly Olynyk. And Kelly Olynyk has really bounced back recently. He's looked great. A little foreshadowing, we'll talk about him in the second half of this video when we go over the player evaluations. But he has played very well, and I think he should draw some interest from some of the veteran teams around the league. And one team that has been interested in him in the past, Ramona Shelburne, last season mentioned that the Golden State Warriors were interested in trading for Kelly Olynyk when he was an expiring. Obviously, the Raptors picked him up last season. They gave up that first-round pick for him and Ochai Agbaji, and Ochai Agbaji has been great, so I really don't mind that at all. But the Warriors might still be interested in him, and the Warriors made a trade that I think they've regretted. They traded for Dennis Schroeder, and they gave up some picks for him, second-round picks mostly, and he's expiring at the end of the season. they probably have some buyer's remorse there. He really has not fit, and I kind of called it before it happened. I'm like, this guy is not a Warriors player, and he really hasn't been. He's a ball pounder, ball stopper. We've seen what happened when they tried to plug him into Darko's offense, which is pretty similar to the Warriors. It just doesn't work. And guess what? The Toronto Raptors would be getting him back probably for a very short period of time. They'd probably waive him, but they'd bring him back. They'd send out Kelly Olynyk, and in return, they would be getting a second-round pick this year. And the Warriors would be getting a guy that they're interested in. He has another year on his deal. He fits into their offense way better than Dennis Schroeder does. And for the Toronto Raptors, I mean, it's debatable whether Kelly Olynyk's second year is, a huge plus. As we've seen, injuries are, at this stage in his career, probably a big risk. I mean, $12 million if Kelly Olynyk, if his back starts acting up again, that contract is going to look onerous. However, he is definitely kind of a quasi-difference maker for a team that needs their players to run a system and play a certain way, especially the Warriors. They need their guys to play a certain way, and he would definitely be that kind of player. And he could slot into that Draymond Green style high post player who can make dribble handoff passes. He can shoot the ball, stretch the floor, do a whole bunch for their offense. And obviously it's not Draymond on defense, but he would give them another option that could really help their offense out. And the Raptors would be getting a second round pick for Kelly Olynyk, so not a bad return. And I'd probably be before this if for the Raptors. I don't mind it getting a second round pick for Kelly Olynyk. That's kind of what I expected anyway, so I'd be okay with that. And those are the trades that I could see happening. That Bucks trade is, there might be a couple of details changed here or there, but I think that the Toronto Raptors or another team, it may not be the Raptors, will have to help facilitate that trade for the Bucks and the Heat. But if the Raptors join up, that could be something that they might be interested in. So there we go. Those are two trades. Let me know what you think about them in the comments. And I'm really happy to hear what you guys have to say. If you have any trades as well, heading towards the trade deadline, let me know. Hit me up in the comments with your trades too. Now, let us get to the Toronto Raptors game against the Orlando Magic, which they won, and we'll get right into the player evaluations. And this one was super easy, no doubt about it. In the starting lineup, Scottie Barnes had a masterclass, real gem. We'll go through the stats here. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, 2 steals, a block, 2 turnovers. On 6 of 13 shooting, he was 2 of 4 from 3, 3 of 4 from the line. Hard to ask for a better game than this from Scottie Barnes. And then again, picking up the other team's best offensive player in Paolo Banchero. And although he had a good scoring night, a lot of it came off of switches. The Orlando Magic were really using screens to try and get Scottie Barnes off of Paolo Banchero. And when they couldn't do that, when it wasn't available to them, and Paolo was trying to go one-on-one against Scottie Barnes just did a masterful job, wonderful job. He stole the ball from Paolo, he clamped him a couple of times. It was just a very good performance on the defensive end for Scottie Barnes. The 10 defensive rebounds were huge, 8 assists, fantastic, 2 steals, a block, really just phenomenal performance, both ends of the floor. We're seeing this more and more lately. I am really loving what Scottie Barnes is bringing to the table. And then again, with the three-point shooting, the shots that he was shooting from 3 were catch and shoot. Love those for him. I think those are a great shot for him when he's open, especially in the corner, which these were. So really enjoying what I saw from Scottie Barnes. He has done it again. And next up, we're going to go to RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, great game. 19 points and 6 of 9 shooting. 2 of 3 from 3. He was also catching and shooting 3-point shots off of really good. I think that the Toronto Raptors offense looked very sharp last night. They were creating open looks for all of their players on good shots for them. A lot of catch and shoot, which is generally some of the best type of 3-point shots you can create. 8 rebounds for RJ, 2 assists, a steal, no turnovers. He did get into foul issues in the first half. He got 3 very early, but then didn't commit a foul for the rest of the game. And it was kind of a laugher in the second half, so he didn't have to play as much. But yeah, he had a really solid game. On defense, especially in the first quarter when the Raptors got off to a bad start, kind of got blitzed. He got kind of tore up defensively in that quarter at least, but then the rest of the game, the Magic were just really anemic on offense. So his defense didn't hurt them. And what he brings is a solid, consistent scorer throughout the game who scores opportunistically and moves the ball and plays the right way. And I think he had a great game. Next up, Davion Mitchell. The third guy here, toss up, because I think Grady Dick also played very well, but I think I'll give it to Davion Mitchell again, because Davion Mitchell is such a great defender. What a great defender he is. He gives the Raptors so much spark, and he was one of the reasons that the Toronto Raptors were so effective at controlling the Orlando Magic and controlling the point of attack. He does such a good job of staying attached to the ball handler. He can switch, and although there are certain circumstances, like he got switched onto De Silva and he was able to score on mismatches, especially around the basket, but he can switch, especially when it's further on the perimeter, where he can really snipe at guys' dribbles. I just really find him a very valuable piece when it comes to a starting lineup where you're playing some certain players that aren't as good defensively. He really fills a lot of holes there. And he had a good offensive game, 7 points on 3 of 5 shooting. He was 1 of 2 from 3, 2 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, 0 blocks, 1 turnover. And he had a couple of errant passes. His pass accuracy is still not great, but he did enough last night on offense where his defense was just way more than enough to really clamp the Magic. He was a big reason the Magic looked horrible. And then in a close fourth, because I think he had a really good game, especially offensively, Grady Dick, he had 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting. He was 2 of 4 from 3. Those threes were of the easier variety. They were both corner threes. I still want to see him hitting those above the break threes, because that's the value add where I see him making a big difference for the rest of his career. I don't want him to be a corner merchant, but he had a good shooting night. He had a good scoring night. He had some sick dunks. He had a poster dunk. He had his cuts were really good, playing off of Kelly Olynyk very well. Yeah, 17 points, 6 of 9 shooting, 2 of 4 from 3. He had an off free throw night, only 3 of 6 from the line. But yeah, he went to the line 6 times, so good for him. 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 turnover. And yeah, I think this was a positive game from him, and I want to see more of this, but I want to see more of those more difficult threes drop for him. And last in the starting lineup, which is a surprise because usually he's, second. He's usually almost guaranteed to slot in at second, is Jakob Poeltl. I think this was probably his worst game of the season. 8 points on 6 shots, 3 rebounds, 1 block, 1 turnover, and pretty bad defense. This was one of the games where he was actually just thoroughly outplayed by Kelly Olynyk, which you don't see very often. And I know single game plus minus is one of the least reliable stats, but Jakob Poeltl negative 26 on the game, and Kelly Olynyk plus 39. You hardly ever see a plus 39, especially in a game that was only 16 points. That's pretty insane. But yeah, Jakob Poeltl just had a kind of a nightmare evening. He even fouled out of the game. Just had a tough night. Usually he brings it against Orlando as well, but he didn't have a good game. Now let's go to the bench. We will start with Kelly Olynyk. Kelly Olynyk had a pretty fantastic game. It's probably his best game in a Raptors jersey. He had 12 points on 6 shots. He was perfect from 3. He was 2 of 4 from the free throw line. 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, 4 blocks, and one of them was just awesome. Just like a kind of come from behind. His man beat him off the dribble. I think it was Trevelyan Queen, and he just came up from behind. He swatted it away. He after he did it, he had this really pained expression, like the physical exertion really cost him there, but it was wicked. Awesome block. And then the old man regret. I feel that. He did have 5 turnovers, which is unfortunate, but he was handling the ball a lot. And yeah, the plus 39. And then on defense, he was awesome. He had probably his best defensive game in a long time. Maybe not just for the Raptors, maybe even going further back than that. He shut down Wendell Carter Jr. Wendell Carter Jr. just had nothing going against Kelly Olynyk. Kelly was completely in his bag of tricks and really overwhelmed WCJ in the post. Really great job from him there. After that, Bruce Brown also had a sweet game. 15 points on 11 shots. He was 2 of 3 from 3, 3 of 3 from the line, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and 1 turnover. Great game from him. The only complaint that I have is the floater. I don't understand. I don't get it. He's probably shooting maybe under 10% on that shot. I would not be surprised if that was the case. It's just not a good shot for him. But other than that, took a bunch of those shots that game. Maybe that's where the 6 misses came from. He was great from 3. He went to the line a bunch. He was making great passes, great cuts, great reads. His defense was good. He really gave them a lift, especially in the second quarter when they got beat down in the first. He and Kelly Olynyk came off the bench and completely changed the tone of the game, and they ran away with it after that. And so good for him. After that, Jamal Shed was played the next most minutes on the team. He had 6 points on 2 of 5 shooting. He was 2 of 3 from 3. So again, his 3 is looking much improved, looking great from that distance. 2 rebounds, an assist, a steal, only 1 turnover, plus 19 on the night. Again, doesn't make a huge difference, but he was moving the ball. He makes the right play. He looks like just a really solid decision maker with the ball in his hands. He had a really good play where he cut to the rim, caught a great pass, and then instead of going all the way to the rim, he hit an open Bruce Brown from the corner who missed an open 3-point shot. But then Shed relocated to the 3-point line. Scottie got the offensive rebound, passed it back out, boom, boom. Shed is open for 3, and he knocks down the wing 3. And so he looks like a solid player, and I've been really impressed with him recently. He looks like a great pickup for the Toronto Raptors in the second round. What can I say? Doing great things off of the bench. A couple other players played in the game, but it wasn't close at all. The Raptors just kind of walked all over the Magic in the second half. I'll mention the first quarter because, god damn, the Raptors just got crushed out of the gates. All of the really negative things that you've seen them do in the past games, leaving guys open for 3. I think the shooting variance for the Magic, especially they played them last game and they went wild from 3 and splashed on the Raptors. It looked like it was going to be another one of those games. Raptors were getting lit up from 3 in the first quarter, but then the bench came in, kind of flipped the script, changed the story, and also they were super shorthanded. So let's keep things in context. The Magic did have Paolo Banchero back. They don't have either of the Wagner brothers. They didn't have Goga Bitadze. They were missing a lot of players. Suggs is out as well, so they're missing a ton of players. And the Raptors are missing some rotation players, but the Magic were super shorthanded, and the Raptors were able to defeat the Orlando Magic at home. And this is kind of where the alarm bells are starting to go off. Like, they were supposed to lose a lot of these games. I think I had them penciled in as a loss against the Magic. I definitely had them as a loss against the Celtics. They've won 3 of their past 4, the Toronto Raptors have. So they're probably not doing any favors for their draft stock. I do want to see the Toronto Raptors get a high draft pick in this year's draft class. Next up, the Toronto Raptors play the Atlanta Hawks. They play them in 2 consecutive games, both of them in Atlanta. So kind of a weird schedule glitch. I'm not sure exactly why that's happening, but it is. They play them tomorrow at 7:30 and then on Saturday also at 7:30, both in Atlanta. And the Hawks are a solid team this year, and the Raptors are horrible on the road. So yeah, I think that they probably will lose both of those games, although they've been playing better recently, so who knows. Anyway, that is the episode. Let me know what you think about the trades that I detailed. Do you think that the Bucks are going to land Jimmy Butler? Do you think the Raptors are going to be involved? Do you like that trade for the Raptors? Do you think that they should be getting more back? Do you think it's unrealistic? Let me know in the comments also about the Kelly Olynyk trade to the Warriors. Let me know what you think about that one too. And don't just talk to me in the comments, talk to me on Twitter and on Blue Sky, where you can reach me at Raps Report. I love talking to Toronto Raptor fans. We're the best. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon, all of that good stuff. It really helps the channel grow. And as always, thank you for tuning in to Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.